The other day, I posted this video where I actually genuinely changed a Trump supporter's mind. And a lot of the comments were saying something like, why would you waste your breath talking to this MAGA scum? It's not even worth interviewing them. And I think that's a really destructive and damaging mindset when you think you're too good to be talking to the people that you're about to be voting with next election.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of That Can't Be Right, a podcast about exploring structural wrongs, cultural oddities, and wild opinions. I'm your host, Ryan, and I'm glad you're listening. Quick housekeeping, follow along at TCBR Pod on TikTok, Instagram, Substack for show clips and commentary. And if you have any money after making your student loan payments this month, please consider donating at TCBR Pod on Venmo. Over the last few years, maybe forever, but we have better documentation now, we've seen the mental gymnastics people do to justify their stances on issues from LGBT plus rights, systemic racism, the Second Amendment, election results, abortion, immigration, even the weather. And I don't know about you, but I frequently think that I'd love to get in a room with these people with plenty of security to ask some clarifying questions such as what and are you serious? And my guest today does just that. Adam is a journalist and documentarian that goes to rallies, events, and interviews the public. And as I was writing this intro, I was going to explain why Adam interviews the public, but I think it'd be better to hear directly from him. So Adam, one, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
And two, why do you do this? What are you hoping to accomplish when you're at these events?
I guess there are a lot of reasons, but the original reason I began to make videos was because I saw a gap in the interviewing space, specifically like the interviewing Trump supporter space, where you have people like Jordan Klepper going out. He does a great job at what he does, but he does more of like a comedy bit. He's doing like a stand-up bit to them. You have the Good Liars, who are also really good at what they do, but they do more of a stand-up bit. And Walter Masterson, he trolls Trump supporters. So I was like, I wonder what would happen if someone went out there and started to engage in good faith. Like, obviously these people are crazy, but what if you went out there and started asking them like serious, genuine questions and trying to get them to understand the liberal point of view? Because like, it's so much fun to watch Jordan Klepper just absolutely make fun of Trump supporters and rail on them. But like, I want to hear some Trump supporters move a little bit to the middle or see if it's even possible. And I also had this theory that like a lot of Americans have liberal beliefs at their fundamental core, but you just have to walk them to that. So like if you talk to a lot of Trump supporters, they'll say something like, yeah, the government should be distributing money to our veterans and to like people on the streets and stuff. So it's like, oh, so you want the government to provide more funding to welfare programs. And when you say it like that, they're like, no, I just want veteran programs to be funded. So I kind of went in with this theory, what if you can get Trump supporters to admit to these liberal beliefs, right? And I guess it's kind of just gone from there where like, I do have clips where I make fun of them, of course, but I also try to approach in good faith. And
have you always been very involved, very passionate about politics?
Oh, yeah. I mean, since I was like 10, I was definitely involved in politics. I had no clue what I was talking about, but I had some family members that introduced me to like Obama's campaign and the concept of atheism, I remember. And I remember being in fifth grade and I was like 11 and I got in an argument with my teacher who was like vaguely against gay marriage because gay marriage had just got legalized, like I think, or was about to get legalized. And I remember we would get in these arguments about politics and like faith and stuff. And I got kicked out of class for that. So it's always kind of been there. I've probably gotten better at talking about it over the years.
In terms of what you're trying to accomplish, getting them to kind of admit that there might be some like underlying liberal beliefs, do you feel like you're winning hearts and minds of like the individuals you're talking to, you know, off camera, after the camera stops? Do you feel like your videos reach the right audience?
I think I'm getting there. I think people need to realize that these conversations can be important. And that having Trump supporters interact with these fact patterns over a long period of time can help deprogram the cult or whatever. I think liberals have a problem where the other day I posted this video where I actually genuinely changed a Trump supporter's mind. And a lot of the comments were saying something like, why would you waste your breath talking to this MAGA scum? It's not even worth interviewing them. And I think that's a really destructive and damaging mindset when you think you're too good to be talking to the people that you're about to be voting with next election. And I understand that Trump supporters can be deranged. You're not going to win all of them or even most of them, but just having them interact with these fact patterns can be very, very important. Like, I read this book a few months ago that said how the KKK used to go find homeless people, and they would take them off the street, clean them up, and basically get them set straight. But in the process, they would integrate them into the Klan or whatever, because they understood the importance of winning over one person at a time and how that can compound into a larger movement. And it should be scary that the KKK understands this, but then you have liberals on our side who are not willing to reach across the aisle like that, right? So the goal is to eventually win hearts and minds slowly, but it doesn't happen over time. Because I think we need to understand that there's a marketplace of ideas in America. And within that marketplace, liberals are right like 10 out of 10 times. Like, we always have the facts on our side. So why would we cede all this ground to right-wingers who are just willing to go out there and talk to them? So it's not that every time I go out there, I win someone over, but it's just the hope that having Trump supporters interact with these fact patterns will help, and that there's other like-minded people in the country doing the same thing.
Why do you think liberals are so bad at that? Like, why do you think what has led us to this moment where you're right? Like, we do want the liberal Democratic establishment, like, does want to help people, provide access, equality, all of these things that a lot of people seem to be for.
Yeah.
But maybe in the battle of public opinion or just like power, when you look at the House of Representatives, like, why haven't they been able to deliver like a clear message and like bring more people on board, you think?
I think part of it is fair because Trump supporters are actually very, very disconnected from reality. I don't want to seem like I'm being too charitable. It's absolutely fair to think that these people are like lost, but I think there's a level of condescension that comes with certain liberals that I talk to where they genuinely think they're just too good to talk to people who are like from the South or dumber than them or whatever. When these are our fellow Americans, like, they're actually people that we vote with every election. I don't even know. It's probably just a combination of things. I mean, if you want to talk broadly, I think liberals give really complex complex solutions to problems like we're supposed to, and Republicans give very, very simple solutions. So for the majority of people who don't really pay attention to politics, Democrats probably look like a little bit like weak. They're too complex or whatever. Republicans are viewed as strong or whatever. But on a personal level, social media has just amplified the worst of both sides. And I say this on a lot of interviews I do. It's so easy to argue on Twitter and get so heated and to think that this person is the absolute villain. But once you start talking to these people face to face, you realize it's literally just like my aunt who lived a slightly different life and was born down in the South. Or it's like my grandma who just is a little bit more delusional or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that my grandma's delusional. She's actually a big liberal. But yeah, I think it's just a combination of things.
But in terms of that delusion, right? The separation from reality. How do you think that's happened? I know you mentioned social media just now, but is that the primary force? Why do people feel comfortable believing things they see so quickly now?
I was thinking about this the other day. I think a lot of it is just poor media literacy skills. I was talking to someone, we absolutely need to start putting media literacy classes at a very young age, like maybe one in elementary school, one in middle school, and like a course in high school, just so people understand, especially with AI coming out. I think a lot of it is people just want to feel special, and everyone wants to feel like they're Neo in the Matrix and they figured out how to break out and they know all of the secrets. This is actually from personal experience. I have a lot of friends in high school who took this really conspiratorial path, and I'd have these long conversations with them, and it would just come down to them being like, bro, I just see everything that nobody else sees. Like, I'm just able to see past the illusions of the government or whatever. They want to feel special, and they basically are trying to cope with how boring reality is by creating all these conspiracy theories. Those are probably the people that are really far out there. The people that believe the election was stolen, that is just putting way too much faith in Donald Trump and thinking that a leader can't lie to you. And that is a whole other topic that it really is dangerous in my opinion.
Agreed. I heard something similar in another podcast that like a lot of people who have latched on to the cult of Trump like don't have anything else that they feel like they can identify with. And this has become something they can rally around, which is, to your point, proven very dangerous.
A lot of it reminds me of like sports culture or something. Like I went to a Bulls game recently and everyone's there in their Bulls merch and like they're like cheering and stuff. And then I went to a Trump rally the next day and it was like the exact same vibe. Everyone was just there as like a sports event. It's really, really damaging.
How are you deciding like which events to go to? Is it just a matter of proximity, or are they happening more often than I realize?
Yeah, so I live in Chicago, and it's one state over from Iowa, which is a massive, massive political battleground heading into the election. So in
Hmm.
January, the first caucus takes place in Iowa. So basically, over the next few months, all of the candidates visit Iowa at least once a week. So I've met like Vivek Ramaswamy up there. I've seen Nikki Haley speak in Iowa. And Trump has been going particularly hard lately. He scheduled 3 rallies this month, and I've been to every single one of them so far. So it is basically just proximity and being able to get the tools together. And it's sometimes like a 4 or 5 hour drive. So it's worth it for the content I get usually.
Did Vivek perform when you saw him?
Actually, really funny story. I saw him speak and I saw him perform Lose Yourself. And I had spent the last 3 weeks preparing a meticulous argument that I was going to take him down, like a road. I was going to ask him about Ukraine and I was going to try to get him to like admit blah, blah. And then I saw him perform Lose Yourself. I was super happy. I find him a few hours later to interview him and he lost his voice. And I
Oh
asked him,
no.
I actually have a video of me going up to him and asking, was it because you performed Lose Yourself? And he like taps my shoulder and he was like, it was a number of things, buddy, or whatever. I can send you the video.
I saw it on your feed.
That one's funny, yeah.
That's unfortunate. I hate when Eminem gets in the way of good political discussion.
Then Eminem and then Eminem said you cannot perform my songs a few days later, which I thought was funny because then we were able to use that clip too.
Lots of interesting choices have been made in the Republican primary as it is, but that's probably one of the weirder ones so far. When you're going to these events, have you ever felt unsafe? The crowd get too rowdy? You mentioned like it takes on like a sports like atmosphere. Have you ever run into any issues?
It's not that like one person in particular has gotten in my face or anything, other than actually last rally we went to, a ton of stuff happened. Like some lady was following us around, but she was harmless. She was following us. I can send you that video too. She was following us, trying to like tell people we were doing gotcha interviews. We were actually engaging with people in good faith. But 2 rallies ago, there was one moment where I remember thinking it was a little unsafe. So I was interviewing one person one-on-one, and there was a whole line like wrapped around because lately we've been having to do this line format because people will always be lined up. So I'm talking to this person, and then we're actually like going back and forth about election fraud, having a really good conversation, and I realize everybody around me is absolutely quiet. And there's a moment where like I'm talking and I look around and there's like 30 people watching us basically. Everybody's listening. And I say something about election fraud and you hear like audible groans from the right and you hear like people like booing or whatever, not like booing, but they're like, oh, come on, man. So like I remember in that moment looking around and being like, holy, we are absolutely surrounded. I should probably wrap this up. I feel like I have that thing going for me where like I'm very obviously a college kid who doesn't mean any harm. And like I think, like I said, when I'm talking to people, it's like talking to my aunt. I think they feel the same way a lot too. Like this is like talking to my grandson or whatever about politics. And that's why I'm able to disarm them so easily and get into like the roots, the weeds of politics, rather than just like the surface level gotchas.
And you mentioned your preparation for Vivek that unfortunately didn't get to deploy. But when you're preparing for these conversations with kind of just like individuals on the street, what's that process like for you?
A lot of it just builds off previous conversations that I've had over the past few years. Like once you start talking about election fraud with a few Trump supporters, it's the same exact dialogue tree every time. It's like, oh, but the courts were rigged. And then I'm like, oh, but those judges were appointed by Donald Trump. And then they're like, oh, but the swamp is bigger than you think. It's just the same thing every single time. A lot of it is just always keeping up with articles, watching political debates online and making sure I can stay sharp and I have like comebacks or whatever ready. And sometimes I do sit here and I mean, before every video, I sit here and I try to script out questions, but it's so on the fly that like once you start arguing with people, a lot of it's just having interpersonal relation skills, right? Like I can prepare all I want, but if when I get there, I don't know how to talk to the people. So that's really what it is. Like once I get there and talk to them, it's just a flow state that you get into almost.
What about from your perspective, watching your videos, no one seems to get like too rowdy or rambunctious, but have you ever interviewed someone where you feel like you were close to losing your cool, or you watch the video back and you're like, man, that cut right there had to happen, or I was going to like look really flustered or anything, which isn't a bad thing, but
There's this one debate where there was this dude, we went back and forth for like 30 minutes about Ukraine, and he got really heated and I got really heated, but it was a really wholesome way because I remember we were both like laughing in the middle of the argument, but we both got pretty heated during that. and it was kind of just like brothers arguing. Like it was just like a normal argument and stuff. So it's never really gotten so bad where I look like I'm getting super flustered. I definitely have stuttered before and cut that out. I definitely have. I don't think I've gotten too flustered. No, no. Usually it's pretty.
That's good. What do you feel is the wildest thing you've heard? I don't know if the clip is out there or whatever, but what's like the wildest conspiracy theory, rationale, or anything you've heard?
Showing up to my very first ever Trump rally, like 6 months ago when this all started, when I decided to jump in the deep end, and I didn't know these two cameramen. We just gotten breakfast together and talked about the game plan. And we went in there, and the first ever interview we do is this lady who's like getting stuff out of her car, and she just starts defending slavery 5 minutes into the interview. Yeah, you've
The
probably
older
seen
lady?
the older white lady. That's the first ever interview I ever did. So it's like insane. We were sitting, I was like, no way. It's like she's just saying this stuff. Like, we thought it would be a little bit harder. What the hell? And then from there, we walked to the rally, and the second ever interaction we do is this lady who's talking about how like Trump is still president, but Biden is president as a facade to show you what it would look like if the Biden presidency happened, but it's just Trump pulling all the strings. So that was the second thing we ever heard. And at that point, all my cameramen and I were like, are we in the Twilight Zone right now? What is happening? So it's not even that there's just one particular interaction. It's just more how all of this stuff happens. And you're like, all these people are crazy. Yeah. Not all.
Right. Not all of them, but no, I remember the lady who was defending slavery. And then I also remember the lady who was like, well, I think you asked her about Ukraine. And it's like, oh no, that's Biden. But like this good thing that happened, inflation reduction, I don't know, example, that's Trump. And it's like, well, how can it? Okay. And once you release the videos, do you ever get any pushback from the person you're interviewing? Or do they ever DM you or like slide in the comments or anything?
Yeah, definitely. So the first rally we went to, there was an interview we did with this 19-year-old kid who said he doesn't think transgender people should exist. And that went pretty viral on Facebook. And his mom DM'd the person who runs, like, have you ever heard of David Pakman?
Not off the top of my head.
He's this progressive political commentator on YouTube, and he posted it on his Facebook for me because he has a larger outreach. So the mom of the kid that I was interviewing reaches out to David Pakman and said, why are you interviewing my 16-year-old minor son on trans issues and sexuality? This is very inappropriate. Please take it down. And then we sent back the video we have of us asking him, what's your age? And he says, I'm 19. I'm in college around here. So she never responded after that. Basically, it was like a little debate in its own. We're like, you're literally lying to us, right? If she would have just said like, hey, I don't like this being out there. Can you please take it down? I would have been pretty empathetic, but she lied to us and act like it was us putting her son in this weird position when we were just talking to him. And then another video went ultra viral of some dude saying 20% of Americans are transgender. I always see him in the comment section arguing with people of that sort. I'll be scrolling through and I'll see him. I know it's him because he commented like, hey, I'm purple shirt. He said that a few months back. And now I'll be scrolling through and I'll see him like defending himself in the comment section, which is kind of funny. I want to hit him up and be like, it's not worth it, man. But
yeah, you got to let that go. You said it now. You kind of got to live with it.
people actually really like it. People are very nice to him in the comment section too, because he was one of the more rational ones. He was like the third interview we did. And it's this, I don't know if you've seen this clip maybe somewhere. He says 20% of Americans are transgender, but then I ask him, should transgender adults have access to gender affirming care? And he's like, absolutely. I think I don't care what you are, who you love, you should have access to whatever. So obviously it went viral because this Trump supporter is so open-minded for some reason. And
I think I do remember that one. He's like, as long as I don't have to pay for it. I was like,
yeah.
Right.
A little weird, but
yeah.
it's progress. I mean, he wasn't transphobic, I don't think so.
Right. Like you said, small steps. It's a process. As we kind of wrap it up, you mentioned you're close to Iowa. That's going to be a battleground over the next year. We're almost to November at this point. What are your thoughts on the 2024 election generally? I know that's like a very vague question, but if you had to like guess what's going to come out of the Republican primary, what issues will begin to rise to the top for people, or what do you think you're going to be hearing as you're at these rallies?
Yeah, it's going to be messy and it's going to be scary, and Trump is going to win the Republican primary, and Biden's going to be our candidate. And I think Biden is the best candidate. It's been something I've been thinking about a lot lately too, because the guy is obviously super old, and it does concern me. And like, obviously you want someone who's like really energetic and fresh, but he also has the ability to build bridges and get things done like no one else does, which I think just reflects his experience in Washington. He is good at getting these small things passed, and he is very electorally strong. Doesn't seem like it, but when 2020 came around, when 2022 came around, people turned out. Biden brings people out. It actually does work like that. He got the most votes in American history. So I think when it comes to Biden versus Trump, as long as Biden doesn't die, I think he should have the presidency, because Trump will be going through all of these criminal trials, and he's just lost so many independents. I don't know. It's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. The biggest thing that is on people's mind always is just economic anxiety. And something that's really hard to combat when I'm talking to these Trump supporters is like something they'll always, almost all of them are like, are you really better off now than you were 4 years ago under Trump? Like, everything's way more expensive. You drive past the gas pump, it's way more. And I think that's something really hard. That's something that's really hard to combat, to try to like convince people that these are based off external factors that Biden really doesn't have that much control over. So I think the biggest issue going into the 2024 election is going to be the economy. And something I think also liberals need to do, this may sound a little bit too generous, but a lot of Trump supporters genuinely just show up at these rallies because they think he's going to be better for their wallet. Like, I can't tell you how many people I've walked up to and they're like, honestly, man, I don't know much about politics. I don't know what you're asking me. All I know is things were cheaper under Trump. So that is something I'm really concerned about, is that the average citizen is going to think Biden and Democrats are just super bad for inflation. That could hurt us. But still, I just think that's outweighed by Trump trying to steal the fucking election. Sorry, can I cuss? Yeah.
You're good to go.
I already did.
You're good. What about the Robert F. Kennedy of it all? Do you think he throws a wrench one way or the other?
No, I think it's insignificant. I think if anything, he takes more votes off of Trump supporters because he's very conspiratorial. And all of my friends who are championing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. were absolutely going to vote for him or Trump either way. So it's like they're acting like, oh, this is a good Democrat or whatever. It's like, you were not going to vote Democrat. You were going to vote for Trump or whoever. So I don't think it's going to affect much at all. And if it does, I think it'll hurt Trump more. And I've been very, very optimistic lately. Like, I am making bets with my friends about who's going to win. Even though we're over a year out, I make like bets on the election because I always tell them, like, I'm not going to talk politics with you if you can't put your money where your mouth is. Because they talk all this shit, and then like when I ask them to make a bet with me, they're like, I don't really know, man. So right now, my interval of confidence is like I'm 90% sure Biden's gonna win, as long as we don't have a massive economic meltdown, and as long as he doesn't pass away. Not gonna win. So
love it, Adam. That's it. Thank you so much for again engaging in good faith, like you do in your interviews. For people who want to have these conversations, similar to the ones you're having on camera, they want to have these conversations with their uncle at Thanksgiving, their grandma, over Christmas. What recommendations would you have for them? Would it be to disengage, or like, here's how you can approach it?
Know when to disengage, because that is helpful. But if you try to just employ Socratic questioning, which is just asking very simple, fundamental questions that can help get to the basis of what a person believes, I think you can go a long way with that without getting overly combative or too crazy. So like I have really conspiratorial friends that I'll be arguing with, and instead of going on a rant of my own, I'm like, how can you believe this when this happens and this happens? I usually just ask them a simple question. Like, I'm just like, so how could that happen when blah, blah, blah? It's like, you just have to ask very simple, fundamental questions without getting super heated and injecting your own argument in there. And then you can eventually move them towards more of a middle ground. And that should always be the goal of everybody, is to find a middle ground on a topic before you can move them to your side. Because too many people just come with their point of view and they're arguing with this point of view. But if you come with the middle ground point of view, it's a lot easier to get this person in the middle ground, and then eventually you can move them over to the right or to the left or however you want to move it. For me, my screen was on the right. That's what I meant.
All good. All good.
Like, you can see this when I talk to somebody about welfare in America. They'll go from, I don't want any welfare socialism programs, and then you go, but you do want veterans to have a base level of funding and like care, and they're like, oh yeah, veterans should have a base level of funding, so it's okay for the government to distribute X amount of money if it makes people's lives better. And then you slowly move them over, they're like, yeah, maybe the government should be able to distribute some amount of money. So yeah, it's more about these middle ground positions and using their language rather than coming off as with these like condescending liberal views, which is what I used to do. I absolutely, a few years ago, talking to my Trump supporter friends, I would be the most condescending asshole. Like, I would literally, I would just act like their views didn't have any merit, which most of the time they do. I would just literally act like nothing they said mattered, but you have to at least engage, you know?
For
And
sure.
acknowledge
For sure.
that this person feels that way for a reason. Like, these people are voting for Trump for a reason, whether it's racism or economic anxiety. Yeah.
So, Adam, that was my last question. Thank you very much. Where can people, that wasn't true. That wasn't my last question, because this is, where can people find you on the internet? I've been enjoying your videos. That's why I reached out. So where can people find you on the internet? What do you have coming down the pipeline that people can consume and enjoy?
My long form videos of me talking to Trump supporters with cool edits are on my YouTube channel. Just look up Adam Mockler, Mockler. I'm sure it's somewhere on the screen. And my Instagram, you can look up the same name. It'll pop up right away. Twitter, you can look up the same name and it'll pop up right away. Those are more of my short form content where it's just really pithy videos of me interacting with people. In my Twitter, there's more thought out takes or just like pithy little comments on what's going on. So yeah, follow all those social medias.
Awesome. All right. That's it. Everybody, thanks for listening. Follow Adam, follow me. Have a great day.
Thank you for talking to me. I enjoyed talking to you.